Something deeply pathetic is happening to the greatest players of our generation. While a 37-year-old Kevin Durant is allegedly glued to a burner account, desperately trashing his own teenage teammates online. And Chris Paul is throwing a lavish team party where exactly 3 people show up. A silent execution is taking place across the rest of the league. These aren't just isolated incidents of drama. They are the humiliating death rattles of the NBA ego. Because while the old guard is fighting for control, a new, terrifyingly perfect machine has rendered them entirely obsolete. To understand the death of the ego, you have to look at the symptoms of the disease. It starts with a profound, terrifying insecurity. During the All-Star game, as the league celebrated its brightest stars, Kevin Durant was allegedly caught doing what he does best: hiding behind a fake name. This time, the leaked group chats weren't just defending his legacy. They were actively destroying his own franchise from the inside out. Using an account called GetHigherKD, allegedly complained about the Rockets running plays for his young teammate, Alperen Sengun. He typed, "I don't give an F. Your franchise player can't shoot or defend." He then allegedly moved on to Jabari Smith Jr., stating he couldn't trust him to make an effing shot or get a stop. This is a 37-year-old man, a supposed leader, hiding behind a screen to tear down the exact players he was brought in to mentor. The paranoia ran so deep, the burner account even dragged up ancient history claiming Steve Kerr favored Steph Curry because of a decades-old punch from Michael Jordan. It is a masterclass in deflection. When the team loses, it is the young guy's fault. When they win, it is despite them. The ego cannot accept decline. It demands total subservience, even if it has to create a fake identity to demand it. If Durant's ego manifests as digital paranoia, Chris Paul's ego is a physical, dictatorial demand for control. When the Clippers signed Paul to a minimum contract, they envisioned a low-maintenance veteran presence at the end of the bench. They fundamentally misunderstood the nature of the superstar ego. Paul, at 41 years old, immediately began micromanaging. He challenged players on their training methods. He dictated how to run plays. In a locker room featuring Kawhi Leonard and James Harden, men who prioritize silent execution over vocal commands. Paul's constant wearing demands felt like an infection. The rejection of this ego was swift and humiliating. The climax wasn't a screaming match on the court. It was a Halloween party. Paul and his wife threw a team bonding event at the arena. They had food, decorations, the whole setup. Out of the entire roster, exactly 3 people showed up. It is perhaps the most painfully awkward moment in recent NBA history. A Hall of Fame point guard standing in an empty room, realizing that his voice no longer commands an audience. The team didn't respect his authority. They simply found him annoying. The ego demands to be heard, but the modern NBA had simply stopped listening. The breaking point for Paul wasn't a bad shooting night. It was his absolute refusal to accept that he was no longer the smartest guy in the room. The fatal blow occurred on the team plane following a disagreement over defensive coverages with assistant coach Jeff Van Gundy. Instead of accepting the coach's directive, Paul allegedly walked over to Kawhi Leonard on the plane, demanding Kawhi validate that Paul was merely offering a suggestion rather than giving a command. He was treating a professional environment like a high school debate club. Van Gundy immediately shut it down. "You don't have that leeway here anymore." The Clippers realized that a 12th man who requires this level of dramatic maintenance is a cancer to a veteran team. So, at 3 a.m., on a road trip, management called him into a room. They didn't trade him. They didn't bench him. They simply told him to go home. They offered a joint press release to save face. Paul refused, stormed out, and posted his grievance on Instagram. It was the ultimate, undignified end. The superstar ego exiled in the middle of the night. Entirely replaceable. While Durant argued with teenagers online and Paul alienated his locker room, a different franchise was quietly building the exact opposite culture. The Oklahoma City Thunder didn't just reject the toxic superstar model, they mathematically eradicated it. Through their first 17 games, the Thunder didn't just win. They eviscerated opponents by an average of 16.5 points per game. That is the largest margin of victory through 17 games in the history of the NBA. They are better than Jordan's Bulls. They are better than the 73-win Warriors. And they are doing it without the defining characteristic of the past 2 decades, the demanding, ball-dominant ego. The Thunder operate with a terrifying factory line efficiency. In a matchup against the Jazz, they were trailing by 7 midway through the third quarter. They didn't panic. They didn't isolate their star player and demand he save them. They simply activated the system. In 7 minutes, a 7-point deficit turned into a 22-point lead. A 29-point swing that happened in the blink of an eye. This isn't about one player taking over. It's about a collective hive mind executing a game plan with such precision that the opponent is mathematically eliminated before the fourth quarter even begins. The machine doesn't care about your feelings, your legacy, or your Halloween party. It only cares about efficiency. The ultimate proof that the superstar ego is dead lies in how the Thunder treat their actual superstar. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the reigning MVP. In the old NBA, his entire brand would be built around heroic fourth-quarter isolation plays to save the day. In the new Oklahoma City system, his heroism is entirely unnecessary. In 10 of the Thunder's last 15 games, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did not play a single minute in the fourth quarter. Against the Hornets, up 17. Against the Lakers, up 36. Against the Warriors, up 35. They are beating teams by a record-setting margin before the final frame even starts. The system is so deep, with essentially 2 starting units on the same roster, that the MVP is often just a spectator by the time the game is decided. This is the exact nightmare of the ego-driven player. To realize that the team functions perfectly, perhaps even more efficiently, when you are sitting on the bench. Durant and Paul demand to be the center of the universe, fighting for control over every possession. The Thunder have realized that true dominance isn't found in one man's hands. It's found in making the individual entirely secondary to the collective machine. The final nail in the coffin of the superstar era isn't offense, it's defense. Hot shooting can be random, but a historic defense is a terrifying, sustainable system. The Thunder are currently putting together the single best defensive season in NBA history. With a relative defensive rating of -11.4, they are mathematically lapping the legendary 2004 Pistons and the Duncan-era Spurs. They have 5 of the top 15 defenders in the entire league. It is a revolving door of active, switchable, disciplined athletes who execute the scheme without ego or hesitation. When the Thunder aren't hitting shots, they will simply drag you down into the mud and ensure you don't either. This is the paradigm shift. The league is no longer a stage for an aging icon to demand trades, micromanage role players, or argue with teenagers from a burner account. The 74-win pace of the Oklahoma City Thunder proves that the future belongs to the egoless, the systematic, and the ruthlessly efficient. The old gods aren't just losing games. They are being systemically erased by a machine that simply doesn't care who they used to be.